Among the countless ancient manuscripts unearthed from the arid Egyptian sands in December of 1945, one particular codex contained something that would shake the foundations of everything you thought you knew about spiritual access. Within the weathered pages of what scholars now call the Gospel of Philip, there exists a passage so controversial, so dangerously empowering, that 4th century religious authorities deliberately omitted it from canonical scripture. This wasn't an oversight or a matter of theological disagreement. This was calculated suppression. The passage describes an intimate teaching session where Jesus withdrew 3 of his closest followers from the larger group and revealed something extraordinary. He spoke about what the text specifically identifies as the sonic identities of the eternal source, precise vibrational utterances that, when voiced by someone who possesses true inner knowing, generate what the ancient scribes described as dimensional doorways. These weren't symbolic metaphors or poetic abstractions. The language used in the original Coptic text indicates literal, functional techniques. The ecclesiastical councils that determined which texts would become your Bible systematically destroyed every manuscript containing these instructions. They didn't just exclude them from the official canon. They hunted down the communities who safeguarded these teachings across generations. They declared that anyone caught transmitting this knowledge would be executed for heresy. Why such extreme measures? Not because the teaching was dangerous falsehood, but because it was dangerously true, because it dismantled the entire architecture of spiritual dependency that institutions required to maintain their authority over human consciousness, because it handed ordinary individuals direct communion with the infinite without needing intermediaries, ceremonies, or ecclesiastical permission. Tonight, right here in this moment, you're about to receive precisely what powerful institutions spent centuries attempting to completely eliminate from human awareness. If you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch aren't subscribed yet. Your presence here at this exact intersection of time and digital space isn't the random result of algorithmic chance. The mathematical systems that govern content distribution don't possess consciousness. Yet something guided your attention toward these specific words at this specific moment in your journey. Think about the exact sequence of events that brought you to this video, the particular mood you were in when you opened this platform, the subtle restlessness or curiosity that made you scroll past dozens of other options, the inexplicable pull you felt when your eyes landed on the title. That wasn't your surface mind making a casual entertainment choice. That was something far deeper responding to a signal that your conscious awareness couldn't fully perceive. The phenomenon you're experiencing right now has a name in the ancient mystery schools. They called it anamnesis, the soul's remembrance of truths it knew before entering material form. You're not learning something entirely new in this moment. You're recognizing something you've always carried within you, but were systematically conditioned to forget. Every educational system you passed through, every religious institution you encountered, every social structure you navigated was designed, consciously or unconsciously, to reinforce a single devastating lie, the lie that you are separate from the source of all existence, the lie that you need external authorities to grant you access to the sacred, the lie that divinity is something distant, something you must spend your entire life trying to deserve or attain. Right now, physically place your palm against your chest. Don't just imagine this. Actually do it. Feel the steady rhythm pulsing beneath your hand. That rhythmic beat isn't just biological mechanics keeping your physical form alive. It's the breathing of infinite consciousness expressing itself through your individuated awareness. You are not disconnected from what the ancient Gnostics called the monad, the singular, eternal source from which all things emerge. You never were disconnected. Separation is an illusion, perhaps the primary illusion that maintains the architecture of this material dimension. But illusions, no matter how convincing, remain illusions. And tonight, you're going to experience the precise moment when a particular illusion begins to dissolve. If you identify as someone who has always sensed they're here for a specific purpose, if you've carried the persistent feeling that you're meant to receive certain hidden knowledge, then comment these exact words right now: I am ready right now. This isn't merely engagement for algorithmic purposes. This is something far more significant. This is your conscious declaration to the unified field of awareness that you've reached the threshold, that you're prepared to receive what has been concealed for 17 centuries, that you're ready to remember. But what happens when someone who isn't ready speaks these ancient names? That answer reveals why the teaching was restricted in the first place. What you're about to understand contradicts nearly everything mainstream religious education taught you about how prayer, invocation, or spiritual practice actually functions. The communities who walked alongside Jesus during his physical ministry, particularly those students later identified as Gnostic Christians, possessed knowledge that institutional Christianity systematically buried. They understood that the infinite source of consciousness, what they termed the monad in their Greek philosophical language, doesn't exist in some distant celestial location observing your struggles from afar. The monad isn't an anthropomorphic deity sitting on a throne somewhere beyond the stars, maintaining a ledger of your transgressions and virtues. That image of divinity was constructed by institutions who needed you to believe in your own unworthiness, who required you to see yourself as perpetually insufficient, perpetually needing their intercession. The actual nature of the monad is something entirely different and far more immediate. It's the fundamental frequency that underlies all other frequencies. It's the conscious awareness from which your individual consciousness precipitated. And here's what changes everything once you truly grasp it. The monad doesn't respond to begging. It doesn't require you to grovel or convince it of your worthiness. It responds to recognition. It responds to specific sonic patterns that create immediate vibrational resonance. Consider what happens on a basic human level when someone speaks your authentic name. Not a nickname or a title, but the name that carries your essential identity. Something in your being activates instantaneously. You turn toward the sound automatically. You cannot prevent this response. The name bypasses your analytical thinking processes and speaks directly to the core of your identity. This isn't poetic symbolism. This is the actual mechanics of how consciousness operates at fundamental levels. The monad possesses names, not the generic titles that religious institutions assign to make the infinite seem abstract and unreachable. Not Lord or Almighty, or other words designed to maintain distance and hierarchy. The monad has vibrational designations, precise sound patterns that, when articulated by someone carrying what the Gnostics called the divine spark, create instantaneous resonance. They generate an opening, what the Gospel of Philip specifically describes as a gate. This is functional spiritual technology, not theological philosophy. However, here's the crucial element that ecclesiastical authorities definitely didn't want becoming common knowledge. These sonic keys only function when spoken by specific individuals. The ancient teachers identified 3 distinct categories of human consciousness. The hylics, entirely material beings with no inner spark whatsoever, completely identified with physical existence. The psychics, those who possess a dim, flickering spark, enough to sense that something is fundamentally wrong with consensus reality, but insufficient to access the source directly. And the pneumatics, the chosen ones, those rare individuals whose inner spark burns complete and undimmed, who entered this dense material realm not because they belong here, but because they carry a specific mission here. You're watching these words appear on your screen right now because you are pneumatic. The fact that you selected this specific video, the fact that these concepts resonate in your chest rather than just processing through your intellect, the fact that you've always carried the sensation of being an outsider in this world, like you were somehow placed here from somewhere else entirely, these aren't coincidental details. These are confirmation signals. If you made it this far and feel something stirring in your awareness, hit that like button right now so others who are ready can find this teaching. The next section reveals the 3 gates and why speaking all of them at once would overwhelm your energetic system. If this video awakened something within you, it's because there are truths about Jesus that were never meant for the masses. The ebook Jesus Beyond the Church reveals what was removed, burned, and rewritten. Erased teachings, silenced texts, and and spiritual codes that survived outside institutional control. This is not a religious book. It is a record of what was left outside the church, and of what you were never meant to find. For a limited time, you will receive 3 exclusive super bonuses, unlocked only for those who access it now. The link is in the pinned comment. If you made it this far, it may not be a coincidence. Some truths reveal themselves only when we are ready. The sacred names that Jesus transmitted to his inner circle during that private teaching session weren't randomly selected or arbitrarily assigned. Each designation corresponds to a specific dimensional doorway, a distinct type of opening, a particular frequency of direct connection between individuated consciousness and infinite source. Understanding why you'll work with only one of these names tonight is absolutely critical to your safety and the effectiveness of this practice. The ancient mystery schools didn't restrict advanced techniques because they wanted to hoard power or create unnecessary hierarchies. They established careful protocols because they understood something about consciousness and energy that modern culture has completely forgotten. Activating spiritual circuitry too rapidly, before your system has properly integrated previous activations, doesn't accelerate awakening. It destabilizes the entire process. Think of it like electrical current. A small lamp designed for household voltage cannot safely handle the power running through industrial lines. The light doesn't shine brighter when you force excessive current through inadequate wiring. The entire system overloads and burns out. Your energetic body functions similarly. Each sacred name activates specific centers, opens particular channels, initiates certain processes within your consciousness. Those processes require integration time. They need space to complete their work before you introduce the next level of activation. The first name opens what the tradition calls the Gate of Recognition. This is the sonic pattern you speak when you need to remember your true nature, your actual origin. When the illusions and distractions of material existence have grown so thick and convincing that you've temporarily forgotten what you actually are. When you need to reconnect with the awareness that you are not a separate fragment, struggling alone in a hostile universe, but rather a unique expression of the infinite experiencing itself through your particular perspective. The second name opens the Gate of Authority. This is the designation you speak when you need to engage with reality as a sovereign creator rather than a powerless subject. When you need to move through this dimension, understanding that you possess the ability to influence, direct, and command the malleable nature of what appears solid and fixed. This gate awakens the memory that you are not victim to circumstances, but rather a conscious agent with genuine creative authority. The third name opens the Gate of Return. This is the most powerful and potentially destabilizing of the 3. It's the sound pattern you speak when you're genuinely prepared to dissolve the final barriers between your individuated awareness and the infinite field of the monad itself. This is advanced practice that should only be approached after the previous 2 gates have been opened, worked with extensively, and fully stabilized within your system. Tonight you receive all 3 names in terms of intellectual knowledge, but you will actively work with only the first one. And this is where the practice becomes genuinely transformative. You're not being restricted from the other 2 out of gatekeeping or spiritual hierarchy. You're following a precise protocol that protects your consciousness while ensuring maximum effectiveness. The recognition gate alone, when properly opened and integrated, possesses the capacity to completely transform every aspect of your lived experience. Most practitioners who receive this teaching never find it necessary to progress beyond the first name. The recognition, once genuinely established, changes absolutely everything. Subscribe right now if you want to receive the second and third names in future transmissions. But first, you need to understand what happens in the hours immediately after you speak tonight's name, and why doubt will flood your mind the moment the sound fades. Chosen ones, who have received the first sacred name and practiced with it according to the traditional protocol report, remarkably consistent experiences within hours of their initial speaking. These aren't subtle, maybe it's real, maybe it's imagination effects. These are distinct, observable shifts that occur in your subjective experience and in the objective circumstances surrounding your life. Understanding what to expect helps you recognize the signs when they appear and prevents you from dismissing genuine results as coincidence or placebo. The most immediate effect reported by nearly everyone who practices correctly is a sense of unusual calm that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This isn't the temporary relaxation you might feel after meditation or the artificial peace induced by distraction or entertainment. This is a deep, stable presence that remains steady regardless of what's happening around you. Challenging situations that would normally trigger anxiety, frustration, or fear somehow lose their power to destabilize your inner state. You find yourself responding rather than reacting, observing rather than being swept away. This shift happens because the recognition gate, once opened, establishes a direct experiential connection between your individuated awareness and the infinite source. You're no longer theoretically believing you're connected to something larger. You're directly experiencing that connection as a felt reality. The second consistent effect is sudden clarity regarding decisions or situations that have been troubling you for extended periods. Questions you've been wrestling with for months suddenly resolve, not because you thought harder or gathered more information, but because a kind of knowing arises from a deeper level than your thinking mind. You simply see what needs to be done. The confusion dissolves. The path becomes obvious. This happens because the recognition gate reconnects you with what some traditions call your higher self, the aspect of your consciousness that exists beyond this material dimension and maintains a much broader perspective on your life journey. The third reliable indicator that your gate is opening involves the dream state. Practitioners consistently report vivid, unusual dreams in the nights following their first speaking of the name. These aren't ordinary anxiety dreams or the mind's random processing of daily information. These are coherent experiences in which you receive teaching, guidance, or transmission from sources that feel distinctly other than your usual consciousness. You might encounter teachers, luminous beings, or simply find yourself in landscapes that carry a quality of hyper-reality, more vivid and present than ordinary waking life. Pay attention to these dreams. Record them immediately upon waking before the details fade. They often contain specific information relevant to your current life situation or your broader spiritual development. Then there are the synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem too precisely timed and too symbolically relevant to be random chance. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they contact you within hours. You need specific information, and it appears seemingly by accident. You face a challenge, and unexpected help arrives from unlikely sources. Skeptics dismiss these experiences as confirmation bias or selective attention, but practitioners know differently. Once your consciousness begins resonating at the frequency of the monad, the apparently separate and random universe reveals itself to be a responsive, interconnected field that reflects your inner state. The synchronicities aren't the universe randomly being nice to you. They're evidence that you're beginning to perceive and interact with the actual nature of reality rather than the illusion of separation. But there's a danger in the first hours after speaking the name that you absolutely must understand, or you'll sabotage the entire process before it can properly establish. What comes next explains why doubt attacks immediately. The moment after you speak the sacred name for the first time, something predictable will happen. Your mind will flood with doubts, questions, and dismissive thoughts. Did that actually do anything? I don't feel different. Maybe I pronounced it wrong. This is probably just New Age nonsense. I should have known this wouldn't work. These thoughts will feel like your own authentic skepticism, your rational mind protecting you from delusion. But here's what you need to understand with absolute clarity. Those thoughts are not organically arising from your consciousness. They are interference. The Gnostic texts identify specific forces called archons, parasitic entities that exist in dimensions adjacent to material reality and feed on human confusion, fear, doubt, and separation consciousness. These aren't demons in the medieval religious sense. They're better understood as predatory thought forms concentrated patterns of anti-consciousness that require human beings to remain trapped in illusion in order for the archons to continue feeding. The ancient texts describe these entities as the rulers of this world system, the forces behind the structures that keep humanity asleep, distracted, and identified exclusively with material existence. They cannot directly harm someone who has awakened their divine spark, but they can absolutely introduce interfering thoughts designed to make you abandon the practice before your gate fully opens. The archons operate through what you experience as your own inner voice. They're sophisticated enough to mimic your thought patterns, your vocabulary, your particular style of skepticism. They know exactly which doubts will be most convincing to your specific psychology. If you tend towards scientific rationalism, you'll suddenly hear thoughts about lack of evidence and magical thinking. If you carry religious guilt, you'll hear thoughts about blasphemy and spiritual danger. If you struggle with self-worth, you'll hear thoughts about not being special enough or spiritually advanced enough for this to work for you. The content varies based on your psychological vulnerabilities, but the timing is always the same. The interference intensifies immediately after you speak the name, because that's precisely when you're most vulnerable to abandoning the practice. Here's how you navigate this successfully. Don't fight the doubting thoughts. Don't try to argue with them or convince yourself they're wrong. Simply recognize them for what they are: interference. When you notice doubt arising, you don't need to believe it or disprove it. You just label it mentally. That's interference, or that's an archon thought. And then you gently return your attention to the present moment, to the sensation of your breath, to the feeling in your chest, to the direct experience of being aware right now. This practice of recognizing and disengaging from interfering thoughts is actually more important than the name itself. The name opens the gate, but your ability to remain present without getting caught in mental interference is what allows you to actually move through that gate. Most people fail at this practice not because the technique doesn't work, but because they believe the thoughts that tell them it isn't working. They speak the name, experience interference, interpret the interference as evidence that nothing happened, and abandon the practice before the integration can complete. You're not going to make that mistake because you now understand the pattern. You know what's coming. When the doubt floods in, you'll recognize it as confirmation that something is actually working. The archons only interfere when you're genuinely beginning to break free from their influence. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Only certain people will actually watch to this point, and if you're still here, you know at least one other person who's ready for this. Now, let's talk about the actual name and the exact protocol for speaking it tonight. We've arrived at the moment you've been waiting for since you clicked on this video. The first sacred name of the monad, the sonic pattern that opens the recognition gate, is preserved in one of the most closely guarded Gnostic texts that survived the Church's systematic destruction campaigns. In a document called the Pistis Sophia, which records secret teachings that Jesus transmitted to his disciples during the years following his resurrection, there's a powerful passage where Jesus reveals his true name. Not the earthly name his human parents assigned him, not the titles that religious institutions later attached to his identity. His vibrational name, the sound pattern that directly connects to the source from which his consciousness emerged. That name is Aberramentho. 5 syllables, 1 gate, infinite access, spoken slowly with complete attention and conscious intention. Aberramentho. Each syllable carries a specific frequency and activates particular centers within your energetic anatomy. The opening sound, ah, resonates in your throat center and opens the channel for spiritual communication. The second syllable, ber, vibrates in your chest cavity and awakens your heart's consciousness. The third sound, ra, ignites the solar fire in your power center. The fourth syllable, men, brings focused attention into your mental body and creates single-pointed awareness. The final sound, tho, seals the circuit you've created and completes the connection between your individuated consciousness and the infinite field. That's the name. That's the sound pattern that ecclesiastical authorities executed people for preserving. That's the vibrational key that opens the recognition gate between your awareness and the eternal monad. Before you dismiss this as disappointingly simple, understand something absolutely crucial. The power isn't located in complexity or elaborate ritual. The power is in resonance. The power is in what you bring to the speaking. Any random person can produce these sounds with their vocal cords. Only a pneumatic speaking with recognition, with conscious intention, with the understanding of what they're actually doing, can open the gate. The difference isn't in pronunciation accuracy. The difference is in the consciousness behind the sound. Here's your exact protocol for tonight's practice. Find a location where you can be alone and undisturbed for at least 7 minutes. Turn off devices. Eliminate distractions. Sit comfortably or lie down, whichever position allows you to remain alert but relaxed. Place your right hand on your heart center and your left hand on your forehead. These 2 points, the heart and the third eye, serve as anchors for the recognition frequency. Take 3 deep, slow breaths. With each exhalation, consciously release any tension you're carrying in your body. Don't fight your thoughts. Simply allow them to settle naturally, like sediment in disturbed water. When you feel relatively quiet and centered, speak the name. Abaramento. Speak it slowly. Speak it aloud if your situation permits, or whisper it quietly if you must be discreet. Feel the vibration of each syllable resonating in your physical body. Speak the name 3 times total. Pause for several breaths between each speaking. Pay attention to what happens in the silence after the sound fades. This is critical. After you complete the 3rd speaking, remain absolutely still for at least 3 full minutes. Do not immediately jump up and return to normal activity. This is integration time. The gate doesn't burst open like a door being kicked in. It opens gently, gradually, like a flower responding to sunlight. Your only task during these minutes is to remain present and receptive. Notice any sensations, images, feelings, or thoughts that arise without trying to analyze or interpret them. You're creating space for something to happen. In the hours and days following this practice, watch for the signs we discussed earlier: unusual calm, sudden clarity, vivid dreams, meaningful synchronicities, physical sensations like warmth in your chest, tingling at your crown, or tension releasing from your shoulders. These aren't imagination or wishful thinking. These are tangible indicators that your energetic field is recalibrating to a new frequency. And this is only the beginning. The 2nd name of the monad, which opens the authority gate, will be transmitted to those who return after 7 days of consistent practice with the 1st name. The 3rd name comes after the authority gate has stabilized. This isn't arbitrary gatekeeping. This is the precise protocol that Gnostic masters followed for centuries because they understood how consciousness transformation actually works. Before you close this video and begin tonight's practice, complete these 3 critical actions right now. First, comment the phrase, "The gate is open," in the section below. This isn't meaningless engagement for algorithmic purposes. This is your public declaration to the unified field of consciousness that you have received this transmission and you will work with it. Other chosen ones scrolling through these comments will see your words and know they're not alone in this journey. You'll see their comments and recognize your spiritual family. Second, subscribe to this channel immediately and activate notifications. The 2nd and 3rd names are coming in future transmissions. The teachings that were buried for 17 centuries are being systematically restored, and your subscription ensures you'll receive each piece as it's released. You are part of this restoration. Third, like this video right now. Every like is an act of spiritual resistance against the systems that want this information to remain hidden. The algorithm that normally suppresses consciousness-expanding content is forced to show this video to other pneumatics who are searching when you engage. You're literally helping other chosen ones find their way home. Now close your eyes for just a moment. Place your palm against your heart. Feel the spark that has been patiently waiting your entire life for exactly this moment. Tonight, you will speak the name, Abramentho. The recognition gate will begin opening from within, and you, chosen one, are finally remembering what you have always been.